Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm, episode 5 of the Farmall 856 restoration. At the end of the last episode, I asked for viewer input on whether I should go further with this, get into this and the torque amplifier, which is the tractor's power shift system. The responses overwhelmingly were yes, and I thank you all for commenting. So in this video, we're going to do just that. We're going to get into this piece, strip it all down, take it off the tractor, see what we got. The first thing to do is to take off this hydraulic clutch assist. So we got some piping to deal with. What we got here is a pressurized line, supply line from the bottom of the MCV here up into this hydraulic cylinder behind here for the clutch. And then we have a return line that dumps back into the case here. This linkage here goes back to the other side of the MCV and actuates the dump valve when you push in the clutch. The reason it dumps pressure when you push in the clutch is because you want the TA and therefore the gear sets behind it to be able to move back and forth a little bit in case you're not quite in mesh and you want to change gears. You want to be able to have the gears roll a little bit to mesh into the new gear that you're shifting into. And this linkage up here, even though it's all giddly wonkers now, goes to the TA plunger. This plunger moves up and down and shifts the TA from low to high. Everything's hydraulic. These are the lines that go out to the transmission oil cooler, supply and return. And they have banjo fittings on them. This is a banjo fitting. It's just a large fitting with a space around the outside here, and then the bolt that goes in it has holes in it. It's hollow, so you can secure it down. It's got O-rings on both sides to make the seal. This is the MCV, the brains of the hydraulic system. It's got its own 9-gallon per minute pump mounted to the back of it, and a whole bunch of hydraulic valves and passages in it. Whoop, not that one. I can't remember where they all are, but these short bolts are just to hold this cover onto the body. So I kind of want to keep them in so they both come out at once. And these 4 bolts with the copper crush washers behind them are the mounting bolts for the hydraulic pump on the back. So we'll leave those in. That should be all the bolts. Here's the valve body of the MCV. When you split it apart, there's spool valves in here and check valves and lots of springs. I rebuilt one on the 756 last winter. You can look up that video. If you're interested in more detail, the owner said that this had been gone through, and I see what looks like a date code on the pump and back here, and it says 8/22/16, so that would mean 8 years ago, approximately 7-8 years ago. Who knows how many hours. I guess the only way to tell for sure is to open it up and take a look, but I'm not going to do that now. We're going to keep going with this assembly. These parts of the shifters lift right off of the speed transmission. And I guess I better mark where they came from. I don't know if they're unique, but better safe than sorry. Front. And rear. The 4 Phillips head bolts that hold these rails on are staked at the edges so that they don't come loose. So in order to get them out, you got to take off where they were staked. Try and bend where it was staked back up. Looking at these rails, I don't think they've ever been out before, because you would see evidence. You'd see marks from de-staking the old screws and restaking in new ones, and they were clean aside from the original stake marks. And in order to replace the torque amplifier up here, you had to take these out and gut this transmission, which leads me to believe that maybe the torque amplifier is original. That would surprise me, but I guess you never know. One rail and fork. Two rails and fork. I have the tractor supported at the front here behind this midsection, and then also in the back with a couple jack stands. It's going to have more weight toward the front, but it's extra insurance. And now I'm going to crawl under here and disconnect this center section and just lift it and put it over here. No, I'm taking off the transmission brake cover before I disconnect things. This is a transmission brake that runs across here, the shaft for it, and the torque amplifier is right above this. Well, why didn't you tell me I forgot a bolt? My gosh. That's the torque amplifier way up in there. And here's the transmission brake. That right there rides against the flange of this gear right in here. You can see where that shiny surface is, where it rode. Get this jack out of here. And this blocking. Oh. The camera was off. I was putting my tools away, but I heard it come loose. The gasket gave way. I've got one bolt left here on each side to take out. She's loose. Now we got to work it off the PTO shaft, or the constant speed shaft, the live shaft. If I had a load leveler, this would be a lot easier, but I don't. We always make it work. The transmission shaft here is free, but the live shaft down at the bottom is hung up a little bit. This gear's got to come off the end of the shaft. There we go. Ah. There we go. On the back side of this middle piece, we've got the output from the speed transmission to the range transmission here. And then down below it, we've got the transmission counter shaft. And then it's hollow. In the middle of it, the live shaft goes all the way through to the front. On the rear, here's that live shaft poking out, going down to the counter shaft on this side. And then here's where that output shaft from the front transmission enters the range transmission, and you've got a locking gear set here with a big roller bearing. In the front of this case, remember we have our buggered up shaft, which is actually the front shaft of the torque amplifier. It's integral to the torque amplifier. And back here on the back side, you have to take the guts out of this transmission to release the bearings to pull the torque amplifier out that way. We got to pull these out. So let's get to doing that. First thing I'm going to do is lock the transmission in 2 gears at once, so it's unturnable. This is a transmission main shaft, and this is a transmission counter shaft, called the counter shaft because it rotates opposite the main shaft. And there's a lock ring on this big nut that needs to be bent back. Well, that nut is a heck of a lot looser than it's supposed to be. I shouldn't be able to turn it off like that. So there's thing number one. Next, the main shaft has to come out, and there's a bearing retainer here. And there's nothing like the smell of old gear oil. Hytran, I should say. This top shaft just pulls out the rear like this. And then you got to catch the gears as they come off inside. That leaves the counter shaft down in there. And a really large shaft and gear set. Not at all like the MD or the Super C. These are a lot bigger. Well, how does that go together? Get on there. Now through the hole that the MCV pump goes into, I need to remove this gear, which drives the MCV pump and is on the PTO shaft. It's got to come out the bottom. It came right out. That's it. Now this counter shaft goes forward and driven out. I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'm going to put some tape on here to protect the threads. Make sure the tape doesn't get caught in there. Well, she's out. Counter shaft gear number one. Spacer. Gear number two. Gear number three. Spacer. hardware. There's the counter shaft. It's hollow so that the live shaft can go through the center of it. There's some gears and spacers that come out of the bottom here, which I believe have to do with engaging the torque amplifier in direct drive or TA. And there's the last piece to remove, the torque amplifier. Whoops, I forgot. Before I remove the torque amplifier, there's 3 hydraulic tubes that go to it. The top one here is lubrication. This is the direct drive, and this is TA engaged that locks up the torque amplifier in the various positions. And they got to come out. See if I can get them out of here without goobering them up. They're just seated with O-rings. There we go. This is like playing whack-a-mole. It's just a tube with an O-ring at either end. Number 3. Hey, did you hear? No, I didn't hear, Pete. Tell me what. A Central European trampoline team was recently arrested. It's true. They're bankrupt. Oh. I don't know if I messed up that joke or not. I think I messed them all up. Oh yeah, I forgot the punchline. They were bouncing checks. Central European bouncing checks. Done. The rear end of the torque amplifier shaft is up in here. And if we go in and look, that thing way down inside there is the end of the torque amplifier. And to hold it all together when I pull it out, I need to put a bolt in the washer in the end shaft here. I know you can't see it, but trust me, that's what I'm doing. My ratchet would work. There's an inner shaft in there, and then there's a sleeve shaft around it, and the bolt and the washer hold them together. I'm going to take these rear retainer bolts off. They got locking plates on them. I don't see any sign of these being folded over twice. They could have put new lock plates in, but I don't know if anybody's been in here before. How am I going to get that one? These bolts actually hold in a cast retainer that's on the other side of this baffle. And I think that it needs to be disconnected for the TA to pull out. Now I need to tip this up on its end. Here's the empty case. I still got a few bearings in here to remove. There's a needle bearing there. There's a ball bearing in back. It's empty though. That's the cavity where the torque amplifier used to sit. Transmission guts are gone. And here's what it looks like from the bottom. And here is the torque amplifier. This right here is an important clue. This is a casting date. January 17th, and then the year code is C. First important thing, this casting comes with the torque amplifier when you replace it, because it's got the hydraulic, some of the hydraulic seals in it, so you get a new one. So this is original to this torque amplifier. International Harvester used a letter code for casting dates on all major casting parts. They went right through the alphabet from A to Z, and then they repeated again when they got to Z. They started back again with A. The only letters that I know of that they skipped were U and V, probably because you could get the two confused on a casting that wasn't perfectly clean. C was made in 1957. That was the first go-round. This wasn't made in 1957. This tractor was, the serial number is a 1969 date. The next time they hit C was 1979. So this makes this a replacement torque amplifier unit that was made in 1979. I'm going to try to give you a layperson's explanation of how this thing's work. Remember, it's a power shift, so you can shift it on the fly without pressing in the clutch and change the speed of the tractor. The first thing is it's got two gears here, one here and one here, that engage with the drive line of the tractor. So depending on whether it's in direct drive or TA, those are the two settings in this unit, direct drive and TA, it'll drive one or the other of those two gears. And these gears are different sizes. So you get a different rate of rotation, hence a different speed depending on which one's driven it. This torque amplifier is powered hydraulically via these three ports. One's a lubrication port, one's the port for engaging the clutches in direct drive, one's for engaging the clutches in torque amplifier TA mode, when you've got the handle pulled back and you want to slow down. There are clutch packs inside of this, you can see the edges of them here, that are hydraulically engaged depending on the pressure coming from either TA or direct drive. This is a vastly different animal, being a hydraulic TA, than the older mechanical TAs. The older mechanical TAs ran with a planetary gear set, and for those that are familiar with planetaries, that's one way of gear reduction in a drive line, is to run it through a planetary. So that's kind of the layman's explanation. This is a replaced torque amplifier. I really can't tell what condition it is in without taking it apart. And taking it apart is a pretty specialized process for these hydraulic torque amplifiers. You can also see why it really wasn't in the cards to repair this shaft in any way. If it were a simple shaft, and Dad and I have done this quite a few times, we can MIG weld this up and turn it down on the lathe. Dad's got one next door to bring it back true, but this shaft goes down in here, and as I said, you run into roadblocks taking apart these hydraulic TAs and putting them back together. The thing to do if you've got a problem with one of them is to buy a new TA. And I buy high capacity through Red Run Right, and that's where I'll be going for my parts on this one. There is one part that I can remove, get a little bit of an idea of wear. In this piece that I removed is a one-way clutch, and these are just sprags here that grab onto the shaft one way over here. I really don't see any wear in them, but I certainly am not an expert on these. And then over here, you can see the first clutch pack in here, and there's a sealing ring down here, and there's a hydraulic piston that drives the clutches together when you engage that side of the TA. I guess the final question is, was this all worth it? Going all the way in here and pulling out the torque amplifier. Remember in the last video I kind of was going either way on the matter. I think it was worth it. Even though everything looked alright to my untrained eye in this torque amplifier, it's over 40 years old. And I'm this far in the tractor, it makes sense to do it. It is a wear item. You can imagine all the things that can wear in this torque amplifier. You've got clutch seals, hydraulic seals, you've got clutch plates, you've got spread clutches. To know what you have gives you a lot of peace of mind when you go through a tractor like this. So I think it was worth it. I hope you do too. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Oh, before I leave, one other thought that I had. This casting I was talking about that's got the date code on it, it could be remanufactured. In other words, it's out of an older torque amplifier and it was remanufactured into this one. So it may be newer than 1979. I just can't tell. Now I'm going in to get cleaned up.